for spine-chilling true tales of haunted souls. Sinister secrets revealed in episode 186 inches the quaint, picturesque neighborhood of Maplewood, where white picket fences and manicured lawns conceal the malevolence lurking just beneath the surface. Sarah lay awake, her heart pounding. Each creak of the floorboards in her modest home echoed like a warning. Shadows danced in the corners of her sight, sending a chill up her spine, a reminder of the emptiness that surrounded her. A year had passed since her husband vanished, leaving a void that two small faces looked up to fill, faces that still held innocence and fear in equal measure. That night, in the small hours when the world seemed to hold its breath, she labored over a leaky sink, wrench in hand, adrenaline masking her fatigue. Just then, the air shifted, a chill ran through her, and hushed whispers curled like smoke from the walls. They were soft, distant, yet terrifyingly close. Her pulse quickened, and she swore she could make out words woven in a language that would not allow her to rest. Then, there came a sound outside, a rustling, sharp and erratic, an unseen presence scuttling past the windows. Panic clutched at her throat. She dismissed it as exhaustion. After putting Jake and Lily to bed, she sank into the couch, but sleep wouldn't come. Memories of her husband's laughter turned to hollow echoes in her mind, replaced by the unease that dragged her deeper into the night. A neighborhood like Maplewood, with its sense of safety, had turned into a haunted maze of uncertainty. Every flicker of light outside felt like watching a predator in the shadows, just waiting for the right moment to strike. As the children spoke of a shadow moving at the edge of their dreams, dread flooded her body. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With each passing night, Sarah's resolve turned to a relentless need for answers. Furtive whispers now blanketed the neighborhood in a shroud of secrecy. She spoke to neighbors, only to find that they too had felt the strange weight of nightfall. The woman across the street spoke of children who cried out in terror for reasons unknown, and the perfect couple who wore smiles like masks hid a somber tale of irony and loss. The whispers grew louder each night, pulling at the edges of her sanity. Sarah learned of the dark legacy of Maplewood, a history living among them, a series of tragedies hidden behind flawless facades. Families like hers had vanished, swallowed whole by the very air they breathed. One night, just as determination set her feet in motion toward the door, the power flickered and died, plunging her into the suffocating grip of darkness. Panic surged as silence enveloped her, a waiting breath suspended in time. Trembling, she felt the shadows pressing in closer, and her heart raced as everything she once knew began to fracture. Was she merely facing her own nightmares, or was the darkness of Maplewood claiming its next victim? The storm roared outside, winds howling like anguished souls, and she stood, paralyzed on the edge of revelation, the terrifying truth pulling her toward the unknown. What was the darkness concealing, and would she and her children ever escape its grasp? The hallway stretched before Sarah like the long, dark tunnel of a nightmare. She held her breath, straining to listen. The whispers grew clearer, insistent, wrapping around her thoughts like a thick fog. It was not her imagination. She could feel them clawing at her sanity, drawing her down the hall. She pushed herself forward, fighting the urge to turn and flee, but there was a morbid curiosity propelling her on. Suddenly, a crash erupted from the kitchen, a cacophony that shattered the silence. Adrenaline surged through her veins, and she darted towards the sound, dread clawing at her throat. The twisting metal of the pipes shifted underneath the sink. The wrench she had put down just moments ago now flew across the floor, clattering against the tiles like a warning shot. "Jake? Lily?" she called, but her voice barely made it out of her mouth, lost in the suffocating darkness. The children were deep in slumber, oblivious to the horror that seeped into their home. She was responsible for their safety, Yet what had she uncovered? The whispers swirled and twirled, threading together ominous warnings, the past, the present, entwined in a sinister dance as she entered the kitchen. Moonlight from the window sliced through the darkness, creating fleeting pools of light where shadows dared not linger. At the far end of the table, she noticed a small, ragged piece of paper, trembling with life as if touched by unseen hands. Sarah's heart raced as she approached it. Goosebumps ran along her arms. Maybe this was the clue, the answer she had been searching for amidst the chaos. With trembling fingers, she picked it up. The writing was erratic, barely legible, but familiar names scrawled hastily, echoing the conversations she'd had with neighbors. Her husband's name was among them, etched in a frantic scrawl, accompanied by the names of others who had vanished. Panic flooded her chest, and the realization hit her like a slap. This was more than just her husband's fate. It was a chart, a map of despair, leading to the darkness that haunted Maplewood. But just as she turned the paper over, a breath hot and sour washed over her neck, paralyzed her. The hairs on her arms prickled, and she fought the urge to scream. The whispers crescendoed, growing into a guttural sound, as if the darkness itself had come alive. Shadows surged in every corner, darting closer, closing in. Desperate, she flung the paper across the room, and it landed at the feet of the shadow that had emerged, a figure nearly indistinguishable from the dark surrounding it, save for the glint of eyes that bore down on her with a predatory hunger. It spoke, but only in the whispers that had haunted her. They were somehow his voice. "Come and find me," the figure murmured, echoing her thoughts, pulling her closer to the brink of madness. Terror coursed through her. The weight of those words settled heavily on her heart. Was this an invitation or a snare? Before she could react, something icy wrapped around her ankle, yanking her down, and she crashed to the floor, breath knocked from her lungs. Struggling to escape, she grasped for anything to hold onto, but only found herself slipping further into the darkness. Just as she thought it was all over, when the world had dimmed to nothing but shadows, an urgent cry broke through the blackness. Jake's voice, raw with fear. "Mom!" A flicker of hope ignited in her chest, enough to propel her back to the surface. But what had the shadows become? Would her children remain untouched, or were they next in the chilling grasp of the darkness? The whispers swelled once more, transforming into a horrific symphony that echoed Sarah's worst fears, mingling with the cries of her children. She was running out of time, and the realization squeezed her heart. The truth of Maplewood was haunting her, an insatiable monster demanding its due. What was she willing to do to save her children from its wrath? Would she uncover the chilling secret that could set them free, or fall victim to the very shadows she feared? As she regained her footing, the question lingered in the air. How much darkness could a heart endure before it surrendered? The kitchen swirled with shadows, and the whispers crescendoed into a terrifying chorus, echoing around Sarah as she tried to regain her footing. She could barely breathe. The icy grip around her ankle loosened, but fear had locked her muscles in place. Jake's frightened voice sliced through the turmoil, a lifeline she clung to while chaos engulfed her. "Mom!" The urgency of his cry rippled through her, fueling a frantic rush of adrenaline. "Jake! I'm coming!" she shouted, searching the dark corners of the room, her heart pounding. The figure loomed, its form shifting in and out of focus, darkness wrapping around it like an old friend. It stared, hungry and unyielding, as if deciding whether to let her escape or draw her deeper into its maw. The air was thick with an unshakable sense of dread. The walls pulsed, alive with secrets waiting to be uncovered. Without taking her eyes off the entity, she crawled backward, inching away from the table where the crumpled paper lay. She needed an escape plan, a way to the children. In that moment, she recalled her grandmother's words, the ancient curse of the spirits that roamed Maplewood. "They won't take you if you don't invite them in." Sarah swallowed hard. Did she inadvertently invite this darkness? A soft thud came from the hallway, where she'd heard the whispers before. It echoed with a murmur, as if the walls themselves were discussing her very soul. The darkness beckoned, but she could not go any closer. Mom! The cries of her children were now tinged with panic, reverberating in her mind like the fatal toll of a distant bell. Any moment wasted was a moment they might lose. With a sudden burst of courage, she turned toward the kitchen doorway, mustering every ounce of willpower to push herself up. She stumbled, feeling dizzy, as her fingers scraped across the floor for support. Behind her, the figure hissed, a malevolent whisper promising nightmares. "Come and find me no!" Sarah roared, her voice shattering the intimate terror of the whispers. If her heart was to keep beating, she had to act. With every ounce of strength, she dashed out of the kitchen, propelled by the cries of her kids. The hallway was just as oppressive as before. Shadows danced, eager to snatch her back. But there was no stopping now. She sprinted, fear a tailwind at her back. Moments later, she reached the door to the children's room, only to find it slightly ajar. A flickering light spilled into the hallway, dancing like spirits in the night. Heart racing, she pushed the door open, and the sight before her was surreal. Jake and Lily huddled against the far wall, clutching each other, eyes wide with terror. "Mom!" They cried in unison, and relief washed over her. Yet the door creaked ominously behind her, and as she turned, the shadow slipped through, detaching itself from the darkness and solidifying before her eyes. It grinned with a horrible glee, its eyes glowing like coals. "Did you really think you could escape?" With a snap of its fingers, the shadows surged around the room, warning echoes of long-lost voices spilling forth. The air turned frigid, and the scream of wind bellowed through the children's room, swirling around them. "Stay back!" Sarah screamed, instinctively stepping between the figure and her children. She couldn't let anything touch them. Couldn't he let the darkness claim them too? But as the whispers swelled into a cacophony of despair, Sarah felt the weight of their fear push against her. What had she awakened? What fresh horrors lay beneath the surface of this cursed night? "Mom, what is happening?" Jake whimpered, clutching Lily tightly. I want to let them take you." Sarah's voice trembled with unshed tears as she felt the sinister energy of the figure tightening around her heart. She would fight. She had to. But as the darkness bore down on her, the shadows began to whisper secrets she had never wanted to hear. Would she remain resolute enough to shield her children? Or would the ghosts of Maplewood finally claim their due? "Come and find me." The figure echoed once more, its grin widening. Sarah braced herself, the edge of the abyss nearing. What would she uncover in the shadow's depths? Would the truth pull her apart or lead her to salvation? The darkness was watching, waiting for her next move. As the chilling air closed in, a final thought crashed against her. Was there something worse than the monsters lurking in the dark? The figure advanced, each step punctuated by the whispers that grew louder, more insistent. Sarah's heart thundered in her chest, drowning out everything but the panic in Jake and Lily's eyes. Felt like the very air was thickening, suffocating. She had to do something, anything to shield her children. "Close your eyes," she commanded, hoping to shield them from the horror unfolding before them. They obeyed, tightly squeezing their eyes shut. "Mom!" Jake whimpered, his voice trembling, cracking under the weight of fear. The entity laughed, a low, cruel sound that rippled through the air. Sarah felt a surge of anger. They wouldn't be victims. Not today. She took a deep breath, trying to center herself. She couldn't falter now. The shadows writhed, reaching out like skeletal fingers. "You invited us in," it hissed, its voice slithering into her thoughts. "You thought you could resist? Stop it," she shouted, her voice sharper than the knife she kept hidden in the kitchen drawer. With every ounce of courage, Sarah leaped forward, shaking off the tendrils of fear that gripped her. She felt the jolt of adrenaline as she bolted toward the entity, determined to save her kids. It tilted its head, intrigued by her defiance. "What will you offer? Your soul?" The darkness pulsed, a wild storm swirling around it. It seemed to revel in her fear, her uncertainty. "I offer nothing," Sarah yelled back, a fierceness igniting within her. "You want to take my children." But even as she spoke, dread seeped into her bones. She focused on a memory, the warmth of her grandmother's embrace, the light that once filled their home. She recalled the stories of resilience, of binding incantations that could push back the darkness. "Jake! Lily!" she shouted, her voice breaking. "Listen to me. We're getting out of here. Trust me." The flickering light in the room dimmed, revealing grotesque faces swirling within the shadows that pressed closer. Their mouths opened in silent screams, shadows twisting into shapes not meant for this world. Why fight against the inevitable? The figure taunted, its grotesque grin widening, revealing teeth like jagged tombstones. "You can't escape, no one can. Then we'll make our own way," Sarah snapped, remembering the stories of hope amidst despair. She grabbed the nearest object, a heavy lamp, and swung it at the entity. It shattered against the dark figure, sending shards of glass into the air like shooting stars. For a moment, silence reigned. But it was short-lived. The air crackled, the entity recoiling for only an instant before reforming, angrier and more daunting. The shadows lunged toward the lamp, snapping it to the ground like a twig. "Foolish human, your resistance only entertains me." Jake and Lily looked up, fear and awe mixing in their wide eyes. "Mom, what do we do?" Jake asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Together," Sarah said, her voice steady as steel. "We have to stand together." She grasped their hands tightly, pulling them closer. "We can't let it divide us." As she held them, she felt their trust swell, a warmth igniting through the cold fear, feeding her strength. The shadows hesitated, wavering in the charged atmosphere. But the darkness was relentless. "You think love can save you?" It purred, lowering its voice to a chilling whisper. And then it lunged, a mass of darkness aimed straight for them, engulfing their world in blinding shadows. "Run!" Sarah shouted as they dashed toward the small window in the kids' room. She had to get them out. She had to save them. But even as she looked back, she knew she was trapped. The darkness closing in every second. It was then a fleeting thought crashed through her mind. What if their only chance wasn't to escape, but confronting what was hidden? Look deep into the darkness. She screamed, her voice cutting through the chaos. "We'll find the truth." The shadows shrieked, rippling like a stormy sea, and the air grew heavier. Was there a way out? Could they face the truth without being consumed? As a cold wind swept through the room, engulfing everything, they were swept away into the shadows. Would they face their fate, or dare to defy it? In that moment of chaos, Sarah realized she might have to confront the ghosts of her past first if she wanted to protect her children's future. "What will you choose?" the figure whispered, its voice a haunting lullaby wrapping around them. As the whispers continued to curl around her senses, Sarah took a deep breath, knowing they stood on the edge of an abyss. Would she find the inner strength to face the shadows, or would surrender be their only fate? The darkness enveloped them with suffocating weight, an endless void where shadows twisted and danced, mocking her resolve. A chilling laugh echoed, hanging in the air like a thick fog. Sarah may have been terrified, but she refused to let it break her. They had to face what lay before them. "Mom, I can't," Jake whimpered, his voice quaking like dry leaves in a gust. "Stay strong," she urged, her heart racing as she felt a shiver creeping up her spine. They had to look ahead, focus on the truth waiting beyond the nightmare. Sarah held tightly to her children's hands, drawing strength from their connection. "Do not look away," she instructed, inching closer to the darkness swirling before them. "Can't hurt us if we face it." As she took a deep breath, the shadows shifted and began to form shapes, distorted figures of lost souls, trapped in their own despair. Each visage was a reminder of the horrors they had faced, and Sarah's stomach twisted at the sight of their sunk eyes, expressions frozen in terror. "Look closely, Sarah," the figure purred, hissing like steam escaping a pressure cooker. "These are the souls who sank into eternal night. They chose not to fight." "You're lying," Sarah shot back, though her voice quivered. "They weren't strong enough." "Ah, but strength has many faces," it whispered, the shadows swirling around her, trying to lure her closer with soft promises. "You think they didn't want freedom? Isolation is a choice too." Behind her, Jake's grip tightened, and she could feel the warmth of Lily at her side. They needed a plan. "We are not like them," she declared, forcing her voice to remain steady. "We will choose to resist." With newfound determination, she summoned her memories, the stories her grandmother told, tales of light overcoming darkness. In that moment, the figures seemed to flicker, unsure, wavering in the crushing shadows. "Your love is futile," the entity snapped, anger sparking through the darkness. And as it did, the shadows churned violently, almost breaking apart. "It will be your undoing." But Sarah stood firm, her heart beating louder in defiance. "No, stronger than fear is our love," she shouted, the words igniting a flicker of light within her chest. "You have no power over us." The darkness recoiled momentarily, the faces around them twisting, their silent screams echoing in the air like a haunting wind. This was it, the moment to turn the tide. "Jake, Lily," she called, urgency fueling her voice. "Hold on to me. Let us push through." Together, they concentrated on their love, causing the shadows to tremble, each breath a heartbeat against the looming terror. But just as rebirth seemed possible, an agonizing roar erupted from the figure, and the shadows surged toward them once more, claws stretching out like jagged knives. "Face the consequences," it bellowed, the words shattering the moment of hope. The air thickened again, and Sarah felt it. Every nerve in her body screamed for escape. But she couldn't falter now. "I won't lose you," she yelled, a desperate plea against the encroaching darkness. "Fight with me." In response, the ground trembled, and a surge of cold air pulled at their feet, threatening to drag them down. The darkness clawed at them, a tangible beast fueled by their fear, longing to swallow them whole. "Look," Jake shouted suddenly, pointing through the chaos. "That book." A glimmer of hope shone amidst the shadows, a weathered, glowing tome hovering near the figure, almost mocking them with its glow. It felt familiar, like an invitation or a trap. "What if it holds the key?" Lily whispered, hope breaking through her fear. Could the power of that book yield the strength she needed? Or was it another cruel deception meant to lure them deeper into despair? With a fierce determination that felt like wildfire igniting her core, Sarah made a decision. "Let us reach for it." As they moved forward, shadows surged, and she felt the very fabric of their being writhe in protest. The whispers grew louder, swirling around them as if warning them of an impending doom. What was waiting in that book? Redemption, or their ultimate doom? As she pushed ahead, the shadows snapped at their heels, the darkness clawing at their resolve. The choice hung heavy in the air. Was it worth the risk? With a pounding heart, she squeezed her children's hands tighter, feeling the wave of warmth that united them. "Let us find out," she whispered, shaking off her fear, determination blazing brighter than any shadow. Just as they reached for the tome, a blinding light erupted, causing the entity to howl in rage. Would this be their moment of salvation or destruction? Only one truth remained. In the depths of darkness, confrontation would determine their fate. Would they emerge victorious or be swallowed whole? The light surged around them, a fierce brilliance that illuminated the creeping shadows. Sarah squinted against the overwhelming glare, the radiance spilling over her skin like liquid heat. It felt like a lifeline in the suffocating gloom, but she knew it was only a momentary reprieve. The entity's howl echoed, filling the void with rage, shaking the very core of their being. "Grab it," Sarah shouted, adrenaline firing through her veins. Her breathing turned shallow as she lunged toward the glowing book. Jake and Lily followed close behind, their tiny bodies pressed against her, united against the onslaught of darkness as their fingers brushed against the tome. An icy shock jolted through Sarah's hand, as if the book itself recognized the fight they were waging. The shadows writhed like snakes, trying to constrict their movements, clawing and tugging at their clothes. Panic crawled up her throat, bitter and burning. She could taste its sweet desperation. "Open it," Jake yelled, his voice rising above the thunder of their surroundings. With trembling hands, Sarah pried the book open. Pages fluttered like frantic wings, revealing words written in a language too ancient to comprehend. Voices danced around them, a cacophony of whispers, soft pleas laced with screams. The pages pulsed with energy, and she felt something shift within her, a resonance that echoed through her bones. In that moment, the shadows faltered. They hesitated, as if caught in a storm of uncertainty. It was as if the power contained within the pages was lighting a spark of hope. "Read it," Lily pleaded, her eyes wide with terror and awe. The whispers drowned out the howling fury of the entity. Sarah focused, forcing herself to decipher the strange symbols. A name, a command, an incantation. She could feel the darkness around them recoil, as if the mere sound of the words struck a blow against the terrifying presence that loomed above. "By the light we hold, we bind the shadows," she began, her voice trembling but growing stronger. Each word echoed with authority, amplifying the strength of their resolve. The shadows shrieked, twisting violently, a tumult of flailing limbs and wretched faces, desperately reaching for them. It felt like the air quaked with each utterance, her heartbeat sinking with the rallying call. Unseen forces collided in a cacophony of chaos. The dark figure writhed, its features a mask of fury. "You dare defy me?" it roared, its voice a guttural growl that reverberated through the air like thunder. As Sarah continued, the spell intensified, shimmering light sprouting from the pages and wrapping around the shadows. She knew there was no turning back now. They were committed to this fight. "We shatter the chains that bind," she finished, the final word escaping her lips like a shot. The book erupted in a blinding flash, an explosion of energy that sent shockwaves through the darkness. The entity screeched, a sound that shook the very fabric of their reality. Black tendrils erupted in all directions, screwing tighter, as if trying to cling to existence. But the light surged forth, tearing through the veil of despair, illuminating the lost souls trapped within. For a moment, the world seemed to hang in the balance. Time stood still, and the weight of dread lifted slightly, but it was only a fleeting whisper of relief. Shadows pulsed, shattering like glass, splintering into nothingness as the light consumed them. Breathless, Sarah staggered back, her skin prickling with residual energy. She could see the faces of the lost souls, fading away, their expressions shifting from anguish to relief as they were released from their torment. But as the last of the shadows dissolved, a chilling silence enveloped them. Felt too easy, too calm. Sarah turned, scanning the horizon, a dread curling in her stomach. "Did we win?" Jake whispered, his voice shaky. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. But something gnawed at her, an unsettling truth that something remained unseen. Shadows may have retreated, but dread lingered like a bad memory, pushing deep and dark as if. Reading her thoughts, the book flickered. The pages began to flip on their own, revealing a new chapter, one that wasn't in the original lineup. A cold sweat trickled down her back. What more had they unleashed? "Look," Lily gasped, her finger trembling, pointing at an ominous silhouette forming in the pages. The air grew heavy again, a chill sweeping through, wrapping around them like a vice. Sarah's heart sank. What came next? Did the battle truly end here? The book's light was waning, and long shadows loomed once more, curling back like snakes ready to strike. What else lay in the depths of this ancient tome? What darkness still lurked, and would they find the strength to face it? With dread clenching her heart, Sarah sensed they weren't finished yet. The true horror was just beginning. The stillness stretched out, taut with tension. Every breath felt like a betrayal, a defiance against the silence around them. Sarah's fingers lingered on the pages, a warning flickering through the air. The silhouette in front of her twisted, darkened like the sky before a storm, whispering secrets she dared not decode. Then, the book began to thrum, its pages vibrating with a foreboding life of their own. The whispers grew louder, drowning out everything, the howls of the vanquished shadows, the thunderous silence of their surroundings. She felt trapped, not just by the looming presence but by the weight of ancient knowledge that threatened to consume her whole. "Not again," Jake breathed, his voice trembling, inching closer to Sarah as though the entity might draw him away if he strayed too far. She turned to see fear etched across his face, a mirror of her own worries. Lily stood frozen, her wide eyes locked on the shadow forming between the pages. What is it? As the figure took shape, it became clear, an amalgamation of hatred, despair, and countless lost souls, a mosaic of every scream that had ever echoed in darkness. The outline pulsed in and out of focus, enticing yet terrifying, beckoning them forward, but every instinct screamed to retreat. Sarah, it's not over, Jake gasped, his voice a thin thread of panic. She gripped the book tighter, her heart racing. The pages beckoned with eerie anticipation. Against her better judgment, she whispered, "What do you want?" It was softer than she'd intended, fear poisoning her words. The shadow surged closer, the temperature dropping sharply around them. Sarah's breath hung in the air like a fog of dread. The entity leaned forward, and through the silence, a guttural response rumbled. Freedom, the single word wrapped around her, squeezing her chest in a vice. Freedom for whom? The lost souls? Or for this dark thing that had tormented them? The book convulsed in her grasp, and the pages flipped wildly, each one a kaleidoscope of agony, revealing faces trapped in distorted rapture. Each expression told a story of betrayal, loss, and hunger. Were these the souls they thought they saved? Or were they simply trading one horror for another? Are they in there, the souls we saved? Lily's voice cracked, and a chill ran down Sarah's spine as she considered the implications. Did their previous victory create a prison for those who had been freed? Release us, echoed the whispers, weaving through the air like an invisible web. No, Sarah shouted, her voice resonating, fighting against the mounting dread. You were supposed to be free. You're not supposed to be here. We saved you. The shadows pulsed, shrieking in agony, mixing with the ethereal moans of souls in torment. The entity loomed larger, its figure a vortex of swirling despair, and Sarah felt the pull of its gravity. Jake reached for her hand but hesitated, as if sensing the danger that lay in the connection. A tangle of light and dark. Something deep within the book glimmered, an invitation hidden amongst agony. Sarah stepped closer, her curiosity gnawing at her resolve. If they could break the cycle, if there was a way out, she would have to face whatever darkness lingered. She had to confront it. "Tell me what you want," she demanded, forcing herself to stand firm against the overwhelming tide of fear. A response came, so chilling it turned her blood to ice. "We want to be reborn." The air thickened, and reality began to fracture around them. Walls of shadow rippled, and a chasm seemed to open in the night. Before she could react, fingers snatched at her ankles, cold, insidious, calling her to the dark void that promised liberation from this world. She fought against the desire to give in, her pulse hammering in her ears. She couldn't move. She couldn't think. Everything within screamed at her to follow, to accept the dark freedom. But what would it cost? "Don't let go." Jake's urgent shout cut through the haze. With an almost primal scream, Sarah clutched the book, feeling its weight anchor her to reality. If they were to face the choice of freedom, they would do it together. For better or worse, the darkness would not claim her or her friends without a fight. "Are you with me?" she shouted, looking into their terrified faces, defiance igniting within her. "Yes," they chorused, voices blending. But as the shadows surged, insatiable and hungry, fierce wind howled through what remained of their world. They had stirred something ancient and powerful. What new horrors awaited them in this twisted desire for rebirth? Would they dare to confront it? As they stood, hands clasped tightly, Sarah wondered if freedom would bind them, or if it would be their ultimate undoing. The shadows writhed as if alive, wrapping around them in a thick shroud of dread. Sarah's heart raced, every pulse echoing in her ears like a death knell. She could sense the desperation flowing from Jake and Lily. They were on the edge of a precipice, teetering toward an abyss that beckoned with promises of release, yet warned of eternal damnation. "Stay focused," Sarah urged, squeezing her friend's hands tighter, feeling their warmth against the icy grip of the shadows. The darkness pulsated in rhythm with her fear, and that rhythm felt like a countdown. The entity loomed large in her mind, a swirl of anguish and want, both captivating and vile. You seek to bargain, but freedom comes at a price. It hissed, the sound slithering under her skin and settling in the pit of her stomach. The book vibrated fiercely now, pages racing past as if highlighting the horrors ahead. Price? Jake whispered, his voice cracking under the weight of uncertainty. Yes, the price is a life, the entity drawled, its form shifting in a way that made Sarah's insides knot. Your lives for the souls trapped beyond these pages. A transaction, a resurrection, or your ultimate downfall. Lily's face blanched, the color draining as she realized the implications. We can't just hand over lives. That's not how it works. Maybe it is. Sarah shot back, her mind a battlefield of morals twisting in the vice of fear. A nagging thought thrummed beneath the surface. What if they were already too late to save those trapped? What if the only way to end their torment was to accept this unholy deal? The shadows roared, swirling and crashing around them as if impatient, demanding an answer. Choose. It growled, greed thick in its tone. I can't lose us all to this thing. Lily managed, her breath hitching, a sob threatening to break free. There has to be another way. Desperation pooled in Sarah's chest. She had spent too long battling darkness, only to find herself at a crossroads with new, twisted choices. What if there's a way to break the cycle? To save both the souls and ourselves? A chilling laugh erupted from the entity, reverberating through their bones. Oh dear child, there is no escape from the bond of flesh and spirit. Only sacrifice or surrender. What is that supposed to mean? Jake shouted, his voice breaking. The entity pulsed, shadows lashing out like whips toward the trio. Sarah barely dodged, instinctively pulling her friends back, the surge of fear fueling her urgency. Think, what if we could find a way to give it something else? A different sacrifice? Like what? Lily cried, panic rising. Maybe it needs something more abstract. Something that isn't a life? Sarah suggested, heart pounding as she grasped at any idea. Despair? Fear? Maybe we can channel the energy it craves without giving ourselves up? The shadow figure distorted, seeming to consider her words, but there was a hunger in its swirling depths that sent ice down her spine. The air thickened, making it difficult to breathe. The weight of the book grew heavier, as if it were trying to anchor them back into darkness. Do not toy with forces beyond your understanding. It snarled, etching despair across its mass. You cannot bargain with me. I am the hunger that gnaws at the corners of your soul. I am the reckoning of your past mistakes. A flurry of memories crashed into Sarah, overwhelming her, each regret morphing into a blade of guilt. I can't do this, she gasped, knees trembling as she fought against the emotional tide pulling her under. Sarah, Jake shouted, his voice a lifeline. Remember the light we found? What if we turn that against it? It feeds on shadows. We can ignite hope. She hesitated, fear still clawing at her chest. What if they failed and ended up as lost souls themselves? But a flicker of resolve sparked deep inside her. There had to be a chance to reclaim what they lost. Together, she shouted, grasping onto that sliver of brightness they had once ignited. We confront it, use our light to break the darkness. The shadows recoiled for a moment, as if sensing the shift in their energy. But just as suddenly, they lashed out, trying to choke the life from their resolve. The shadows writhed and screamed, trying to drown out the very hope Sarah sought to instill. Do it, now, Jake urged, his voice filled with fierce determination, with tears streaming down her face, as if surrendering to the light would mean losing everything she held dear. Sarah vocalized the unbroken whispers of hope and desperation boiling in her. We are not yours. We will not succumb. We hope. But as their words left their lips, the shadows writhed violently, clearer than ever that they were no longer merely fighting for themselves, but for the souls that had been chained in torment and despair. The darkness raged around them, swirling like a tempest, threatening to engulf their bright spark. Would their desperate shout be enough to command the storm? The answer lay just beyond the clutches of despair. Would they stand and face the darkness or lose themselves to it? Sarah took a deep breath, her heart pounding. They had to fight, but what awaited them if the darkness retaliated? A bright flash erupted, blinding them momentarily. When the light faded, they were no longer in the dark void. But what new nightmare had they awakened? They stood in a different realm, the landscape warped, filled with gnarled trees twisted into grotesque shapes, their branches clawing at a sky smeared with swirling gray clouds. The air felt stale, thick with an unnatural silence, broken only by the occasional whisper that slipped through the clenched teeth of the wind. Sarah's breath hitched, instinctively pulling Jake and Lily closer. "What happened?" Jake asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," Sarah stammered, dread pooling in her stomach. The light had been a beacon, but now it felt like a cruel joke. A flickering firefly swallowed by darkness. We were fighting, but now we're somewhere else. The shadows had vanished, but their oppressive weight lingered like a fog around them. Every sound felt amplified, echoing off unseen walls. In the distance, a low, mournful moan coursed through the air, sending shivers racing down Sarah's spine. "Maybe we should move. Find a way out," Lily suggested, her eyes darting around in panic. But where was out? This place felt like an endless maze of despair as they began to step forward. A chilling chill gripped Sarah's arm. A figure materialized, a wisp of smoke coalescing into a tortured visage of a woman. Her eyes were hollow, pleading, yet furious. As she hovered closer, the whispers sharpened, flooding Sarah's mind with their anguish. "Help us, please," the apparition cried, her voice echoing like a death knell. "What do you want?" Jake asked, backing away as if the proximity of the spectral figure burned him. "Freedom," the woman whispered, her translucent hand outstretched. "We are bound here, forsaken souls, lost to the darkness. You have the power to unravel our chains." "Chains?" Lily asked, her voice trembling. "What chains?" The woman gestured to the ground beneath them. "This realm is one of despair, forged by the entity you've encountered. We suffered for your choices. Choose to save us or seal your fate." A knot twisted in Sarah's stomach. Their fight had not just consequences for themselves. Others had been dragged into this nightmare. But how could they help? What power could they possibly wield against something so ancient and corrupted? "Stay back," Jake shouted, raising his hands instinctively. "You're not one of them. We didn't agree to please." The figure's voice morphed into a screech, shaking the very ground they stood upon. "You have hope. We feed on it. Give us the hope you tried to ignite." Sarah's mind raced. That light they found, could it be harnessed to save these souls? But what did it mean for them? Could hope truly transcend the darkness? Suddenly, the trees began to shake violently, erupting into monstrous life as the shadows of the past emerged from their depths. Spectral figures, once prisoners of fear, now lurked and clawed at them, yearning for release. "We must face them," Sarah said, her voice rising against the cacophony of wails. "If there's any light left in us, we can set them free." But as she stepped forward, a rush of wind enveloped them, swirling the shadows closer, snatching the breath from their lungs. "Foolish mortals," the entity bellowed, its voice dripping with malice. "You think you can escape? I am the darkness that feeds on your anguish. I will have what I demand." The ground split beneath them, revealing a chasm that seemed to surge with an evil light, dark, pulsating, and chaotic. "No," Lily cried, her voice breaking against the howl of fear. "We can't give in." The vision of the damned souls flickered, trapped in a relentless cycle of torment. They needed a voice to fight against the howling winds of despair, but the growing dread flourished around them. "Sarah, what do we do?" Jake shouted, panic shattering his composure. "Stick together. Hope is all we have left," she screamed back, thrusting her heart and soul into the words as the shadows began to consume everything around. But as the abyss yawned wider, it became clear that hope alone might not be enough. What would they sacrifice to turn the tide? Were they ready to uncover the darkness that lurked within them? And could they even hope to emerge unscathed from the clutches of the entity? The freezing shadows pressed in, their sinister whispers threading through the air like a venomous fog. Sarah felt the full weight of despair, dragging her down. Yet, hatred and fear surged within her, blazing a fiery path forward. She wouldn't just battle for herself or her kids. She would take on the whole dark history of Maplewood. Listen up. We need to share our light, she shouted, grasping at the flicker of hope that burned within. Jake and Lily linked their hands with hers, their palms warm and steady, and she felt a rush of security that draped around them like a bubble against the chill. Mom, what if we can pull them back? Jake breathed, wide-eyed but resolute. If we can tap into their despair, what if we can give them back their light? Yes, Sarah exclaimed, a fierce determination cracking through her voice. Together, we'll push against the darkness, and we one stop. The wailing shadows lunged, swirling like a darkness-infused tempest, but Sarah gripped the book tighter. I refuse to let you take over our lives, she shouted, pushing her thoughts into the depths of the void, ardent bravery overriding fear. You want the light? You'll have to face the truth. The shadows recoiled, as if struck by an unseen force. The anguished figures advanced, impending doom clawing at their throats. But Sarah's heart pounded with defiance. Look, she cried, we can bring you back. We'll fight together. She drew on her memories the stories of her grandmother's warmth, of laughter, of love. Each heartbeat pumped strength into her voice. With each shout, she and her children emitted ethereal light, eyes shimmering brighter and brighter. By the power we share, we set you free. She rallied, their voices intertwining, a melody of light weaving through the shadows, igniting the air with luminescence that pierced even the darkest void. The tempest held as lights danced across the realm like fireflies, illuminating the tortured souls bound to their pain. The resulting brightness pushed against the oppressive night, a fierce resistance forcing back the shadows that cried out in agony. Fools! The dark entity hissed, shadows shrieking in a panicked rally. What can you possibly suddenly? The underbelly of despair shifted. One by one, the lost souls began to shimmer, their forms lifting lightly from the choking ground. The realization stretched through Sarah's chest like electric charge. They were taking the hope she offered and using it to turn their despair into freedom. Yes, Sarah shouted, feeling the surge of power mount with each soul's liberation. She watched as their hollow eyes turned bright, and slowly they spoke, incoherent at first but then building into unified strength. Together we rise. With renewed force, the light mingled with their whispers, rapidly creating a blinding tide that rushed forward, displacing the darkness and cracking it apart almost like solid ice. The shadows screamed as they were wrested from their bitter hold, lost wailing souls being drawn into the warm glow of hope. Feel the bond. Feel the love, Sarah cried, watching in awe as shadows slipped back into nothingness, the pressure that had held them captive fracturing under the mighty force of united light. The darkness faded, the entity writhing but unable to withstand, its power draining with every flicker of defeated pain. Yet, just as victory seemed to wash over them, a rift opened in the horizon, a storm of swirling void, furious and brimming with malice. You think you have won? It roared. You have only ignited my hunger further. But you're wrong, Sarah shouted, the warmth of her children steadying her resolve. You thrive on despair, but we will always choose to rise. The shadows howled, furious. Yet the light pulsed as thousands of souls emerged behind the children, rising in unity, a sea of warmth overcoming the dark that had feasted on them for too long. We choose hope, they cried. A final blinding pulse erupted from their hearts, and the entire realm resonated with the beat of love, hope, freedom. A song that echoed across the material and ethereal. The shadows shrieked, swept away by love's relentless surge, the swirling darkness diminishing into the void from where it came. Maplewood's tragic curse broken. And just like that, the landscape shifted. Home again. Breathless, Sarah fell to her knees, her chest heaving with relief. Lily was clinging to her, eyes glistening with happy tears while Jake smiled, the light of hope blooming in his face. She wrapped her arms around them, engulfing both kids in an embrace. Is it over? Jake whispered. For us? Yes, Sarah replied, feeling lighter than air. I promise you it's over. From the distance, wispy phantoms faded into the light of day. The shackles of Maplewood finally falling away. In the ground beneath, unseen slates split apart gently, new roots intertwining, symbolizing rebirth, echoing a bright laughter, one of love, joy, and peace. The shadows had been dispersed completely as sunlight broke through the arc of the heavens, illuminating their home once more. Sarah smiled at her children, years of haunting memories finally vanishing. They had faced their darkest nights together and triumphed. Now all that mattered was starting anew. Let us never look back, Sarah said softly, their fingers intertwining again. With heads held high and hearts filled with hope, they stepped forward toward their new life. It was quiet outside, a stillness brimming with promise. And that was how Sarah, Jake, Lily, and the souls of Maplewood emerged from the darkness, ready to embrace the morning light. You need to subscribe now to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Your support really matters. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. I want to hear what you think. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.